exposed to certain behavior. Because the truth be told, a number of conflict resolution skills are not being taught or even demonstrated in their homes. And so school has, in a sense, taken over the role of parent and teacher and nurse. And the truth be told, we are playing dual roles where students are concerned. So they come back to us with a whole lot of issues. And I had recently a girl who came and was in conflict with another girl just because their mothers are in a conflict in their community. So they are carrying whatever they're exposed to in their communities into our school. And we know as educators have to see how best we can address them. And some of the things that we have looked at as a school is that we have, for especially those who we deemed are at risk, we do have from time to time intervention programs like a behavior modification program that we, along with the disciplines, employ to address those critical situations. Of course, we have our guidance sessions and our HFLE teachers who teach conflict resolution skills within our classroom setting. A number of our student teachers that have been trained in restorative justice, so they're able to mediate between conflicts and so forth. And we try to create an atmosphere where students are able to talk about how they're feeling. Because sometimes I see if they're able to express how they're feeling, then the conflict would be resolved to a certain extent. Because what I find out is that sometimes because of the inability to express their feelings, they resort to conflict. And of course, children live what they learn. So it's a challenge for us, and it is one that we have to know address like immediately.
And I do agree, this is everybody's business. Interpersonal conflict among our youth, our children, because it's not only in the high schools alone. These things are also happening at the primary level. So it is really a cause of concern. And as you said, Mr. Fowler, whatever is happening in the communities, it often spills over in the school. Because, one of the schools I was working at one point, they would have their external gangs or gangs that they were part of. And I remember this particular incident where they were having external conflicts, some of the boys. And a young man who had already left the school came on the compound and started fighting, boys who were on the compound. Of course, it ended in a bloody battle. He was damaged, because other schoolboys saw and they were like, no, you're not gonna come on our compound and beat up one of our own. So it's like us versus them, and it is everybody's business. When you go on the buses, the taxis, when even on the road, children don't even say good morning anymore, or they don't even care that adults are around. So if there's perhaps anyone thinking, it is the school's business, and they no. Until it gets to your family or your own doorway, you will recognize that it is everybody's business. Now, another part of the article said that up to last year, I believe, that 60% of the violence in Jamaica not 60%, but shootings had declined by 6%, and these statistics are coming from the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Rape had fallen 60%, robberies climbed 3%, breaking 7.8%. But guess what? The majority, which stood at about a whopping 15, 16, 17%, was caused by interpersonal conflicts. People unable to resolve their differences, people unable to accept that, hey, this person is different from me, they're gonna think differently than I do, or see the conflict differently from I do. But I want to bring on Mrs. Riley to speak to this as well, if she would have any pointers, any information regarding some of these strategies in the schools to counteract the interpersonal conflict.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists, moderator, listeners, and everybody sharing on today's platform. I just want to start off by making the comment that because we are human, intrinsically we have a propensity to engage in conflict because of our differences and our diversity. And whether in school, at the workplace, within the community, because we're different and we have different views, conflicts will likely emerge. So what does this mean? It means that the persons who have to manage a particular space have to be so informed that they are able to offset or combat or mediate when conflictual situations arise, just because of the fact that they know that it's likely it's going to happen. So within the school environment, earlier in the program, I'm sure Dr. Bell and other persons shared on the platform the different programs that are implemented in schools that speak to dealing with interpersonal conflict. And I just want to add that having worked in a particular setting myself that was not necessarily a school setting, that one of the things that worked was actually giving the different parties who are involved in the conflict a voice to share. Because as individuals, we need to know that we each matter and really we want our voice to be heard. Yes, sometimes we might not agree with what the other person has to share, but by giving the respect to listen to the other person, we can move in the direction of trying to find an amicable solution. And one of the other things I want to mention too is that we have to know the persons who we are working with. So if you're a teacher in the classroom, you know your class. Dr. Bell spoke about developing a profile for the children that are in your class, how they learn, and whatever. When we know the children who we are working with and we spend time getting to know them, then even when conflicts arise, we can know how to approach the situation. And I dare say that maybe in the classroom setting nowadays, less time is spent on the individual within the classroom because the main objective is to get the content in. But we are all people. We need to connect. And by connecting, we develop trust. And when we develop trust, we are able to communicate and negotiate with each other. So, for example, where I worked, when there was conflict arising between two sets of people or two groups of people, somebody out of either group would always come and tell the person in charge that, hey, something is going on, something is going to happen between this side and that side. So you need to do something fast. And that was a deciding factor because we got the information beforehand. We were able to go in and intervene before things escalated. So it might sound simple, but the concept of developing trust within the environment within which you work will give you more of an opportunity to resolve conflict and to lead corrective decisions to form a resolution that is going to be in the benefit for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Riley. And as you spoke to building trust, I remember earlier this morning, Dr. Bell was talking about building relationships with the students. Of course, there are a plethora of reasons why at times, and I speak as one who has been in the classroom for a while, at times it is somewhat difficult to create this relationship because of all the other challenges, the administrative challenges, personal challenges, and so on. But it is worth a try. And I was even saying to someone this morning when I heard her talk about building relationships, I was saying to them that especially children who they seem defiant and they have that complex about them, always in some conflict. Once you have built a relationship with them, they will listen to you. Have you noticed that in some schools, you have some teachers that as soon as that teacher, you will have this one that, their behavior is so deplorable. And then once that teacher or whoever comes on the scene and start to talk to this one or that one, they come right down. But no longer should we live by the mantra, children should be seen and not heard. Those things have to go through the window because if we don't listen to them, they will force us to listen. And oftentimes when they force us to listen, they get themselves in trouble and also bring bodily harm to others. But what I want to ask, for me, I think, building the relationships with them can be very effective. But for Mr. Fowler, what do you think is the most effective strategies being in the school system and, having that rapport with the students? What strategies do you think are most effective? Of course, no one hat or one size fits all, but share your thoughts.
Well, I think you said it rightly. There is no one solution to the conflicts that arise, because conflicts arise out of various reasons and from, of course, individuals from various places. And what is happening in Kingston may be different in terms of what causes a conflict inside. And however, there are some strategies that can be used right across the platform where what we have done is that we have seen the need for relationships, as you have rightly pointed out, about building relationships with those students and knowing those students and creating a profile for those students. What we have done is that we have extended our form time where our form teachers have with our students. So normally it would be like 20 minutes. We have extended that to 40 minutes. And we have not just extended that, but we have also created what we call a form time program, which incorporates some of the things that we want them to learn that would complement guidance and HFLE. So like conflict resolutions and things like these are taught within that space of time as well. So it's not just the HFLE or the guidance counselors or the leaders disciplines or the vice principals and principals who is speaking about conflict, but we have the form teachers who have them for that period of time in the morning. So in a sense, we are
It's awesome. Continue, sir.
all right.
So
So in a sense, add more. So we have done that, and I think that is one of the things that we have implemented, and it is working for us as well. So that's one. Of course, we have the various strategies that we normally use, where we tell people to count to 10. I find out now that you have to count to like 20. And we tell them to walk away. But here's the thing: we talk about counting to 10. We talk about walk away. We talk about speaking to an adult. But we find that our students are not necessarily employing these strategies that we're teaching them in regards to those. So it has to be a situation where we identify prior to the conflict some of the things that may cause conflict. So sometimes you'll have a student and you'll see them walking in the corridor and you see them very upset and you wonder. Sometimes if you allow them to pass by, you may hear later that they were involved in something. So as teachers, as administrators and educators, we have to be aware of some of the signs that trouble is brewing, for whatever better terminology. And pull that child aside and say, hey, what's going on? And sometimes by doing that, you realize that this is the situation that is happening. I have had, an guidance team I've had, and many occasions we have students come to us and say, sir, I need you to do something now, or miss, I need you to do something now because this boy is troubling me. Tell me about my mother, and I'm going to do something, and I want you to. So they're realizing as we continue to do, and I think as we continue to emphasize the need to speak to an adult whenever there's a situation brewing, I think we have more of us doing that. I think we have got to just keep hitting the strategies because I think over a period of time, it is changing culture. Because keep in mind again that we have them for like 8 to 3 Mondays to Fridays, and they are now sent home, and for that period of time they are exposed again to what is at home. So I think we also have in mind where the parents' involvement is concerned. I think that's a great strategy that we have to use. We involve the parent in the whole thing. So we teach them conflict resolution skills that they too need to model the behavior that they want the students to follow. So while we're doing what we can as school, we've got to also address the home and by extension the community, because it's not just a school issue. We get them from the communities and the communities get them from their homes. So we've got to address on all fronts as it relates to this.
Right. Perfect. And even to add to that, when they actually apply the strategies, commend them. So when Bobby come and say, Miss, you better do something because If this one have them, push it down and allow them to speak and focus and glad you came to me. Good job. Commend them because our children still want the commendations, but they still want to do that. We see them trying to do the right thing. Miss Bridget, thank you. They still want that commendation and to know that we see that they are making an effort. As hard as it is, they are trying to make an effort. All right, Dr. Gibson, from a psychological standpoint, can you share some other strategies, that may also be looking at the self and going a little deeper, some strategies that could also help our children to better manage conflicts?
Okay. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me. Just want to mention that I'm not a child and adolescent psychiatrist, as was mentioned, but I'm a psychiatrist that do see children and adolescents really often. In terms of deeper kinds of strategies, first of all, let me say that I'm in full agreement with what has been shared so far. I think that there may be a tendency to look at the child in isolation and not recognize that there are so many other important influences, community, family, peer, and others, right? And so, as Mr. Fowler had said just now, it's very important to have a kind of multi-sectoral, holistic kind of approach. I think that at the heart of conflicts that become escalated, often there are a few things that are lacking. I think a sense of respect, both for oneself and for others. If that is absent, then it's much more likely that there is conflict that is going to be escalated. I think often as well, persons tend not to take responsibility for their actions and therefore become unreasonable when they are called out on things that are affecting other persons. And that's something else that escalates conflict. I think that if we can try to build respect and responsibility in our children, but not just in our children, in the wider community, because I do agree that responsible or influential adults need to model this kind of behavior. So children need to see it all of the time and all around them for them to internalize it and to draw on these resources when they're in particular situations. So besides respect and responsibility, I think a sense of fairness is also important. And I think helping persons, including children, to develop a greater sense of empathy is also another important strategy. And as I've said, it's not just trying to teach children these skills. I think it's about us as adults. Everyone has a role to play. Us demonstrating these attributes in situations that we face will allow children to assimilate these attitudes and values and behaviors when they themselves are in difficult situations.
All right, thank you, Doc. And I'm happy that you pointed out that we all have a role to play. We have to, as advanced in age as we may be, it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to start doing things differently. It's never too late to change a culture. And for, especially in our current setting, the culture has changed dramatically, drastically. It's almost as if the culture of being kind, some people are still kind, but the culture of being kind to each other, loving to each other, caring and so on, those things would seem to be fading out. But as the adults, we have a responsibility to do the thing so that they can see and learn as well. All right, but what about the gender and the age? You can speak to this, Doc, and Mrs. Riley also, and Mr. Fowler, gender and age. What genders do we see at the age group presenting most with challenges managing their conflicts?
All right, let me try and go first as it relates to that question. I work with children 0 to 18 years, working with the CPFSA, and we have seen certain behaviors emanating from varying age groups, even as young as 5 years old, from a child is able to speak. And I want to bring to the fore at this point the concept of trauma and what is happening in our society, and the hurt that we as a people are feeling. And as such, if we see a rise in interpersonal conflict, what else is happening within the space that is causing or pushing these factors? And the fact is, we are a nation that is hurting deeply because we are very violent. We are not as empathetic, as Dr. Gibson mentioned, that teaching empathy is one of the ways to combat interpersonal conflict. And as a nation, how empathetic are we? And then the things that we are absorbing within our social space as it relates to the music and what is projected in the culture and in the entertainment. Really and truly, why are we surprised when kids are going to school and everybody call themselves hothead and decide that if anybody say nothing to me, we just go done him? Why are we surprised? We need to, it's like we are all drinking from a well that is poisoned with all this level of aggression, trauma, bitterness, violence, everything. And then it all leads to all levels of conflict. So it's as in relation to directly answering the question, I'm seeing it across all age groups of children that I interact with in working in my capacity with the CPFSA. And I made mention of a 5-year-old when I read his file recently. He, the issue of attachment has to do with stimulating proper behavioral responses. So if a child is securely attached and has a healthy, loving, stimulating environment, projects and the balance and however, this 5-year-old had attachment, but had an attachment with a parent, maybe a father, who was maybe not a very nice person. Because when this 5-year-old was exposed to other authority figures and other caregivers, he would spit, scratch, curse, and behave in the most violent ways. Now, children are sponges. Everybody is born with a blank slate. So the socialization, the nurture, the level of nurture, the kind of nurture is the key. We're coming out of environments, children are coming out of environments where parents tell them, nobody lick you, lick them back, not take nobody lick, not take the tough chat from nobody. And yet, we wonder why there's so much interpersonal conflict. We have to fix ourselves as a nation. And I mentioned trauma before, and I mentioned so many other things. But all of these things muddled together create the crisis that we're in. But I want to say there is hope. There's good traditional Jamaican values that, thank God, yesterday I was a part of a seminar and one lady, I said, we were supposed to list some strengths. And she said, Miss, one of my strengths is I still teach the good old Jamaican values. And what did she mean by that? I teach the children my children, my grandchildren, and so to say, please, excuse me, yes, sir, yes. And I had everybody give her a round of applause. Because, when I hear about the good old days, people were kind to each other, people were loving each other, and there was so many good things happening that make us uniquely Jamaican. That's why tourists would come here and say, oh, Jamaica, everybody no problem. But what is happening now, is that changing? We need to think seriously.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Riley. Thank you. Mr. Fowler?
Yes, I agree with Mrs. Riley. It's right across the board. I don't think we can pinpoint and say this age group or this age group. I think what we may see is in terms of the extent to which the students in the upper grade will go in regards to, acting out, rather than a grade 7 might just go slap and when you go higher, you are talking about weapons and so forth. So I think it's right across the board. but in terms of what they do within the setting or within that situation, is a little bit different. So it will have to be right across the board strategy to deal with the whole thing. And it's not like we can give up on a generation and say, all right, this generation it's among our young people. So we'll have to say, all right, we're not going to give up on Jamaica then, in order to see this thing resolved. So we have to address it, and I think we have to address it as soon as possible. And it's going to take not just teachers and guidance counselors, because a lot of the time people believe that guidance counselors have the solution to all their problems. And it's true in schools, and if there are guidance counselors here, they will tell you whatever it is, go to the guidance counselor. Go to the guidance counselors. And sometimes what we need is all of us, because whatever comes home affects all of us. So I think it needs all of us to be a part of it, and it starts where you are. So whatever grade you are dealing with, whatever children you are interacting with, see how best you can impact their lives and be a model to somebody who model a behavior and that you want to see, because at the end of the day, they will be the ones taking over from us, and we can't just leave them as anything happen. It has to be addressed. So it's right across the board.
Yes, sir. And it just brings back to memory that we're all functioning in a system, and so each part has its own function. But if a part of the machine is rusting or it's not operating as it should, if we need to put some WD-40 in some areas, then we have to do that, because if that area is affected, then the entire system will be going haywire. And lots of us drive. I mean, if something is knocking on the there, a tire needs changing, the front end wants some work, the strong mount needs to change, and feel good and know two little something okay. Girl, yes, I know two little things, two little something, If the display needs to change and that car not taking you anywhere, you will have to get out and push it until you fix what is wrong. So the idea is for us to all recognize that we all have a role to play. We're all a part of the system, and we have to do our part. And sometimes it is difficult, because you may see these young men, these young girls, and sometimes for me I'm fearful. I want to be impactful to them. I want to take them under my wing, but sometimes there's a little fear. But if we want a better Jamaica, we will have to put the fear aside, and we will have to rise up and do something, because our children, they are in trouble. But like Mrs. Riley said, all hope is not lost. There are things that we still can do. I mean, even today, and I'm not a panelist today, I'm not, our children, a lot of them don't even go to church anymore, or go to Sunday school, or that sort of thing, where they can learn some of these values, being kind, being loving, being forgiving, being merciful, having compassion. I heard Dr. Earl, I think mentioned this when I was volunteering. There was one time that I actually heard a dancehall song going against volunteerism, and I had to really look and say, what? And these are the things our children are absorbing. So when you tell them we're doing some volunteer work here, because of what they've been hearing, they have a negative view or negative conception. So if the music is working hard, then we will have to work a little harder to put the right things in them. All right. So some of this we mentioned earlier about the school-wide positive behavior intervention and support framework. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, Mr. Fowler? For those who may not know, those who may not be aware. Oh, I was asking about the school-wide positive behavior intervention and support framework.
All right. It's a new framework, so I am not even too what would I say now? Aware of the intricacies of it. It's not something that is just being rolled out.
Rolling out,
Right. So if there's another person in the panel who is more aware than I am, then I would allow them to speak. Yeah.
Mrs. Riley or Doc, while they come, yes, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, no, I'm not aware of
Okay,
details.
All right, so what I do know, the little that I do know, is this. This is basically a plan that each school comes up with in how to basically intervene in behaviors, come up with new strategies and ways of doing things. So earlier this morning, Dr. Bell spoke about, the dismissive and the punitive measures. What do we do instead of a flunky? What do we do instead of telling them, come out of the class and go stand in a corner somewhere? What other intervention strategies we can apply when these behaviors occur, and who do they go to? What is the chain of command or the channel through which these things are dealt with? I think it has to do with the whole matter of expulsions, suspensions, and so on. So basically, for all the schools that they're trying to put this framework in, is basically how to do things a little bit differently now. And I'm sure, thank you, Mrs. Franklin Clark, I am sure that it is that kind of framework that will help the schools then to put a better behavior modification system in place for those who are not aware. And I heard mentioned earlier the school mental health literacy program. School mental health literacy program. Mr. Fowler, are you aware of that one either?
Now that I'm looking in the chat, SWPBIS.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one you're talking about.
Yes,
it's a framework that has been, in fact, it's not new. It's been around for a little while. But not many, I don't think there's a whole lot of schools. And as rightly said, it's a framework that
it's a framework
you use within your own context of a school.
Right.
So it's a framework that helps you, but you are guided by whatever internal situation that you find happening there. So it's basically replacing some of the punitive measures that we normally use.
Right.
Detention and so forth and so on. So it's basically there's a teaching component to it. At our school, we actually employ aspects of it as well, where we have and they rubbed up now. I hope nobody can hear me. But we have our steps leading up certain positive things, like in terms of being kind and so forth and so on. So it's basically in the face of the students on a daily basis. We also have where we, within our class, within every classroom, our form teachers are given what we call, I'm trying to remember the term we use, but it is basically classroom rules where we as a student behavior, or we emphasize certain behaviors that we want to see. For example, students are told to raise.
Hello, Mr. Fowler. Wow. I don't know, something seemed to have happened. All right, so until Mr. Fowler returns, I'm not sure what is happening. I'm not hearing him, seeing him again. Dr. Morgan, Dr. Gibson, why do I keep on calling Dr. Gibson Dr. Morgan? As a psychiatrist working with adolescents and young adults, a population, what mental health disorders do you see presenting in school-aged youth?
Okay, so I think I would have a kind of skewed population of persons who come to see me, because many persons, unfortunately, are reluctant to come to the psychiatrist. But depression, anxiety, children who have issues adjusting to, and it's a very broad area to various things. see a lot of children who are lacking motivation, some motivation, and as well substance use issues. I think those would be the top ones in terms of diagnoses or kinds of conditions that people contribute for.
Do you believe that the interventions have they assisted? So for the young adults that you see presenting these things, when they are treated, does it reduce, the likelihood of the interpersonal conflicts that they normally would engage in? Based on
I think that interventions do help to reduce conflicts. I think that some of the issues that are often at the heart of conflicts include things like high level of frustration or low frustration tolerance, as well as not having developed good or effective coping strategies. Through a process of therapy, these are areas that can be addressed and that often lead to some improvement in the conflict issues. I just wanted to mention one other thing. I'm going slightly off point, I know, but in keeping with something that was been said before, has been said a few times, that's come up a few times in our discussion about community. So I do think that community is very important. We mentioned from the point of view of children absorbing approaches and attitudes and so on based on what's around them and how we all have responsibility. But I also think that part of the problem, part of the reason that we have these conflict issues in the first place is that there isn't a very strong sense of community, or the sense of community isn't strong enough, that there's a lot of individualism, which is when differences now become magnified and the possibility of a conflict is going to be greater. So I think that in terms of dealing with the conflict issue, if we could somehow strengthen community ties, then that would be something to look at. I also think that a lot of the times conflicts arise when persons have an exaggerated response to a situation where they think they have been offended or disrespected or something of that sort. And often that is indicative of an unstable sense of identity, of value, of worth. And addressing those issues, helping not just the children, but the adults who the children are emulating, helping to these persons to develop stronger sense of who they are and their value, I think is something that ultimately will help with these conflict issues as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. All right, as we come to the end of our panel discussion today, I know we wanted to go a little further, but all good things must come to an end at some point. So, Doc, while we're still with you now, do you have any closing or concluding statements this afternoon?
Okay, so concluding statements is yes, there's hope. We're all in this together. We need to come together and have a true community to get us through this challenge that we're facing.
Yes, sir. All right, Mrs. Riley, any closing comments, conclusion?
Yes, I just wanted to share that I concur with what Doc said in terms of building community ties. I remember many years ago it was said that parenting is Jamaica's biggest problem, because when parents don't have the skills, they're not able to raise the children properly, and that seeps out into the community, then it seeps out into wider society and all of that. And I want to make mention of something that I read many years ago, that the children in an African village when the mothers were strapping them on as babies, when they're carrying them around because they didn't have caregivers, other caregivers to give them to, they would face the children strap the children onto their back facing out, or if they strap them to the bosom, they would face out. And out of that concept, it got the child from a very young age to see that other people matter. Other individuals are there with me, journeying with me. But when we look at a North American culture, when a child is being held, the child is being held bosom facing in. So they are focused on themselves and the individual, right? And we're talking about this concept of individualization versus the sense of community. And in Jamaica, we have to find the intricate balance where, yes, we learn to value self, but we also value others. And one of the reasons why it's arguable that our murder rate is so high is because even the people who are committing these atrocities don't value life. They don't. They would just take a little bit of money to kill somebody, even if they themselves have no beef with the person. What does that tell us? That we don't value life, we don't value other people. You understand? And we come up with these terms like, oh, the one there waste man, or she done, or it says something about who we are. So from a cultural, social, spiritual standpoint, and I can say all of the others, we need to look within ourselves. We need to connect with each other. We need to love ourselves, and we need to help our nation to heal, because the trauma plus the violence and everything else causes us to be in a worse state. But there is hope. There are practitioners and guidance counselors, therapists, psychologists, teachers, people who mean Jamaica well, who are working at it. And we thank everybody for being here today. Please, that we can save each other. Let's save each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Riley. Thank you. And as your moderator this afternoon, it was my pleasure definitely having this discussion with, these individuals who have been practicing in the field, who are seeing these things, presenting, seeing our children. But, I heard the quote once that said, there is nothing wrong with Jamaica that cannot be fixed by what is right with Jamaica. So we have enough to get the work done, and let us not forget the divine intervention. Let us not forget the prayer of
the Lord.
Let us not forget, because there is so much we can do, and we study and we do the work, but there are some things that are spiritual, and unless we pray and ask God's intervention. And as I close, I want to refer to this story. When I was at this high school, I remember one day a young lady was having an anxiety attack. Now, at the time, I never really knew how to really, as a guidance counselor, I never really knew exactly the tactics or what I needed to do or whatever. And the young lady came to me and she was sleeping and couldn't breathe and everything. And I just hit her. And I started to say, yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me, for the Bible tells me so. And that shall come right down. So we have those tactics as well. Let us use them. It was a pleasure. It was awesome being here. And of course, what good, and may God go with you all. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Mrs. Moyan. And it was very, very informative indeed. I wanted to share, just listening to everybody, and one of the things that was highlighted by all the panelists is that we need to build a stronger community ties. When I was working with Dr. Herbert Hill at one point in Montego Bay, and we know how violence has been in Montego Bay for the past years, we were working with a particular group. This group was called the PMI group. I think the initiative was, the research was as a result of them. peace management initiative. So what they did was to get persons from the communities that they had a lot of violence in, somebody who is respectable, somebody who can talk to the persons in the community and try to solve some of the issues that we're having. I'm not sure if the PMI initiative is still about, but I believe that it was a very good initiative. Just stemming some of the interpersonal problems that we're having in this country. I also realized that it is all our responsibility, and that is one of the key words that we need to look at. It is all our responsibility to be respectful, and that is the next R word, key word that we should be looking at in all relationships, and that is the next word, key word that we should be looking at in order to manage interpersonal conflict. So let me say that again, nice summing up. It is all our responsibility to be respectful in all relationships in order to manage interpersonal conflicts. And as we had said before, variety is the spice of life. Everybody is going to be different. Everybody is unique. And that is one of the awesome things about life. You're not getting the same thing every day. You get something different every day. And it is just for us to, continuously open our eyes and try to build those strong bonds. All right? She liked to drink the water, and some of the water fall down the side of her mouth. That's not how you like it, because you might eat as nasty or whatever. But it's for you to go to this person and say, all right, then, I don't really like it when you do that, but if it is something that you must do, I would prefer if you do not do it in my preferred sense. It's easy enough to some extent. But others will make a mountain of it, But you just have to understand that, hey, persons are different, and as a result of that, I need to understand the difference that they come with to the table so that you can, manage the conflicts that we may have better. All right? Dr. Gibson did highlight a few issues or adolescents who will come to it. Can anybody tell me at least 3 of the issues that persons would present to him with? All right, Trudian, let's hear what you have to say. Trudian Davis.
I just narrowed down to 2. Anxiety, substance use, and the other one I forgot it, but
All right, thank you. Let me see if there's anybody else that would and maybe able to give you something. I'm gonna work on it for you, Shoni. So
can I
Melody?
Yes, I think he mentioned adjustment issues, anxiety problems, and depression.
Right. All right, so you're just gonna contact Miss Beverly in the chat and give her your information so that she can get your credit, whether it's slow or digital. Oh, we only have Flo now. So Miss Melody, even if it is that you're going to have to give it to somebody else, you can give it to me too. I have Flo. All right. I also wanted just to go on that a little bit one more time. Social learning theory is something